The Last Stand by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. Outpost 89. Taurus 9 was a planet that didn't belong to anyone, not truly. It was a speck of rock adrift in the vastness of the pillars of creation, a nebula so ancient and immense that even light seemed to hesitate before passing through its dust-laced corridors. 7,000 light-years from Earth, nestled in the constellation Serpens, Taurus 9 was the farthest human outpost in existence, and it felt like it. Outpost 89 stood like a scar on the planet's surface, a cluster of steel and reinforced glass surrounded by jagged terrain and violet skies that never changed. The air was breathable but thin, tinged with metallic dust that clung to skin and gear. The outpost's perimeter was lined with motion sensors and automated turrets, though they hadn't fired in years. Nothing ever came to Taurus 9. Nothing ever left. Colonel Wyona Walker stood on the command deck, staring out at the horizon where the twin moons of Taurus 9 hung low and heavy. She was tall, athletic, with silver-white hair cut to shoulder length. Her uniform bore the insignia of the Galactic Marine Corps, but it was the scars on her knuckles and the quiet steel in her gaze that marked her as a leader. Outpost 89 was her command, her burden. The Marines stationed here were AI-augmented, their neural implants allowing instant communication, tactical overlays, and enhanced reflexes. They were the best Earth had to offer, at least they had been. Now they were bored, restless, and half convinced they'd been forgotten. Wyona knew the signs, the long silences, the casual insubordination, the way they stared at the stars like prisoners dreaming of escape. She called for assembly. The parade ground was a wide expanse of polished alloy, flanked by barracks and the central command tower. It had never hosted a parade. No music, no flags, just the sound of boots on metal and the occasional gust of wind carrying the scent of ozone. The Marines gathered in formation, their armor gleaming under the pale sun. Some wore helmets, others didn't. A few had painted their gear with symbols, wolves, skulls, stars. Wyona didn't mind. Let them have their rituals. She stepped forward, her voice amplified by the outpost's comms. "Marines," she said, "we've lost contact with Earth." A ripple moved through the ranks, heads turned, eyes narrowed. "All Coalition satellites and relays have gone silent. The last transmission we received was a warning. An alien fleet is en route to Taurus 9. Our orders are clear. Delay the enemy at all costs." Silence. Then a low murmur. Not fear, anticipation. Wyona let it settle before continuing. "I won't lie to you. We're cut off. Reinforcements may not come, but we are the line. We are the shield. And if this is where we fall, then we fall standing." She saluted. The Marines returned the gesture, fists to chests, boots snapping together. No one spoke of retreat. No one asked for odds. They had waited long enough. Now, finally, the boredom was over. Chapter 2. The Warning. The message came in fragments, a burst of static, a flicker of Earth's insignia, then a voice, distorted, urgent, and unmistakably human. "Taurus 9, alien fleet, hostile, delay at all costs." Then silence. Colonel Wyona Walker replayed the transmission again and again, searching for nuance, for hidden meaning, for anything that might suggest hope. But there was none. The signal had come from a deep space relay near the edge of Coalition territory, and it had burned out mid-broadcast. No coordinates, no fleet size, no timeline, just a warning. She stood alone in the command tower, the glow of the holographic interface casting shadows across her face. Outside, the sky was darkening, Taurus 9's long dusk settling over the outpost like a shroud. The nebula's tendrils curled across the heavens, beautiful and indifferent. Wyona tapped her comm implant. Lieutenant Rowe, gather the squad leaders. Parade ground. 10 minutes. Yes, ma'am. She didn't need to say more. The tone of her voice carried everything. Down below, the Marines assembled once again. This time, there was no ceremony, no formation. Just clusters of armored figures, their visors lit with tactical readouts, their expressions grim. Wyona stepped onto the platform, her boots echoing against the metal. "We've confirmed the transmission," she said. "An alien fleet is headed this way. We don't know who they are or what they want, but we know they're coming." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some of the Marines exchanged glances. Others clenched their fists. "We are the farthest outpost in human space," Wyona continued. "There's no backup, no evacuation. Our mission is to hold this planet for as long as we can, delay the enemy, buy time for Earth." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I won't sugarcoat it. This may be the last fight we ever see. But if it is, then let it be the fight that defines us." A silence fell over the parade ground. Then, slowly, one Marine stepped forward. Sergeant Kess, a veteran of the Orion skirmishes, known for his dry humor and unshakable calm. "About damn time," he said. Laughter broke the tension. Nervous, defiant, real. Wyona allowed herself a small smile. "Dismissed. Fortify the perimeter. Ready all defense systems. We have 2 days, maybe less." The Marines scattered, their boots pounding against the alloy ground, their voices rising in urgency and purpose. The outpost came alive, turrets calibrated, bunkers reinforced, drones deployed. The AI systems synced with the Marines' implants, feeding them tactical overlays and predictive models. Inside the command tower, Wyona watched the preparations unfold. She felt the weight of command pressing against her chest, but she didn't flinch. She remembered her first deployment years ago on a frozen moon where diplomacy had failed and blood had stained the ice. She had survived that. She would survive this. Or she would die trying. Outside, the stars shifted. A flicker of movement in the upper atmosphere, a shadow against the nebula. The enemy was close. Chapter 3. Preparing for War. The outpost had never felt so alive. Within hours of the warning, Outpost 89 transformed from a quiet station into a fortress. The Marines moved with precision, their AI implants syncing seamlessly with the outpost's defense grid. Tactical overlays lit up their visors, showing weak points in the perimeter, optimal firing zones, and fallback routes. The hum of machinery filled the air, turrets rotating, drones launching, bunkers sealing. Colonel Wyona Walker walked the perimeter, inspecting every station, every soldier. She paused at the northern ridge, where a team was installing plasma cannons salvaged from a derelict freighter. The cannons were old, but they still had bite. "Status?" she asked. "Operational in 2 hours," said Corporal Juno, her voice clipped and confident. "We're rigging them with motion triggers and thermal sensors. Anything moves, it dies." Wyona nodded. "Good work. Keep your team sharp." Juno saluted, and Wyona moved on. Inside the barracks, the mood was shifting. The boredom that had plagued the Marines for months was gone, replaced by adrenaline and purpose. They cleaned their weapons with reverence, checked their armor for microfractures, and swapped stories of past battles like talismans against fear. Sergeant Kess sat at a long table with a group of younger Marines, his voice low and steady. "Rule 1, he said. Never trust the first wave. It's bait. They want you to waste your ammo." "Rule 2? Asked a wide-eyed private. "Shoot where they're going, not where they are. And if you see anything that glows, run." Laughter, nervous, but real. Wyona watched from the doorway, unseen. She didn't interrupt. These moments mattered. They were the glue that held the unit together. In the command tower, Lieutenant Rowe coordinated the defense grid, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "We've got orbital mines deployed," he reported. "Turrets synced to motion and heat, drones patrolling every quadrant. If they come, we'll see them." Wyona stepped beside him, her eyes scanning the tactical map. "They'll come fast," she said, "and they'll come heavy." Rowe nodded. "We'll be ready." Outside, the sky darkened further. The nebula's tendrils curled like smoke, and the stars blinked in and out of view. Taurus Nine's long dusk was deepening, and with it came a sense of inevitability. Wyona returned to her quarters briefly, not to rest, but to reflect. She opened a small case on her desk and pulled out a photo, faded, creased, but still clear. A younger version of herself, standing beside her sister on Earth, both in uniform, both smiling. Her sister had died in the first contact war. Wyona had never stopped carrying that loss. She placed the photo back in the case and stood. There was no room for ghosts now. She stepped out into the corridor where the klaxons began to wail. Motion detected in the upper atmosphere. The enemy was coming. Chapter 4. The First Wave. The sky tore open. It began with a ripple, barely visible against the violet haze of Taurus Nine's atmosphere. Then came the thunder, a low, bone-deep vibration that rolled across the planet like a warning from the gods. The Marines looked up as the clouds split, revealing the enemy fleet. Hundreds of ships, sleek, jagged, and utterly alien. Their hulls shimmered with iridescent plating, and their engines burned with a color no human had ever seen, something between blue and blood. They descended in formation, precise and merciless. Wyona stood on the command tower's observation deck, her visor filtering the glare. Her heart didn't race. It slowed, focused. "All units," she said through the comms, "engage defensive protocol. Target drop pods mid-descent. No mercy." The alien ships released their payloads, thousands of drop troops encased in spiked capsules that screamed through the sky like falling knives. The Marines responded instantly. Turrets locked on. Plasma cannons roared. Drones swarmed. The first wave of capsules exploded mid-air, torn apart by precision fire. Alien bodies tumbled from the wreckage, limbs flailing, weapons already drawn. Some activated personal shields mid-fall, landing hard and rolling into cover. Others were vaporized before they touched ground. Sergeant Kess led a squad near the southern ridge, his voice calm amid the chaos. "Pick your targets. Don't waste shots. Aim for the joints. Those suits aren't invincible." His team responded with disciplined bursts, cutting down aliens as they advanced. The enemy moved like liquid metal, fast, coordinated, and brutal. Their weapons fired arcs of energy that melted steel and scorched flesh. Wyona was everywhere. She moved from sector to sector, issuing orders, reinforcing weak points, dragging wounded Marines to safety. Her armor was scorched, her rifle overheated, but she didn't stop. At one point, she found herself face to face with an alien commander, taller than any human, its face hidden behind a translucent mask that pulsed with light. It raised a blade that shimmered like glass. Wyona didn't hesitate. She fired point blank, the blast punching through the mask and sending the creature sprawling. "Not today," she muttered. The battle raged for hours. Supply crews joined the fight, wielding improvised weapons and salvaged gear. Civilians who had come to trade or refuel found themselves in the middle of a war, and many chose to stand and fight. Even a few alien freighter captains, unaffiliated with the invading force, took up arms beside the Marines. unity born of desperation. By nightfall, the ground was littered with wreckage, alien bodies, human bodies. Smoke curled into the sky, mingling with the nebula's glow. The outpost's outer defenses were shattered, and several sectors had fallen. Wyona regrouped her forces in the central compound, the last stronghold. She looked around at the faces of her remaining troops. Bloodied, exhausted, resolute. "We're not done," she said. "We hold this ground, no matter what comes next." Outside, the enemy regrouped. Inside, the last defenders prepared for the final stand. Chapter 5. The Siege. The sun never truly set on Taurus 9. It simply dimmed, casting the planet in a perpetual twilight. But now the darkness felt earned. Smoke from the battlefield hung thick in the air, and the ground trembled with distant impacts. The enemy had not retreated. They were regrouping, adapting, learning. Outpost 89 was no longer a military installation. It was a war zone. Colonel Wyona Walker stood in the central compound, her armor dented, her visor cracked. She had refused replacement gear. She wanted her troops to see her as she was, worn, bloodied, and still standing. The compound was the last fortified structure on the planet. Reinforced walls, subterranean bunkers, and a central command node that still pulsed with power. Everything else had fallen. Outer defenses, barracks, even the landing pads. The enemy had swept through like wildfire, leaving only ash and ruin. Inside, the remaining Marines worked in shifts, some manned turrets, others patched wounds. A few sat in silence, staring at the walls as if trying to memorize them. Wyona moved among them, offering quiet words, a hand on a shoulder, a nod of recognition. She knew their names, their stories. She carried them like armor. Sergeant Kess limped into the command room, his leg wrapped in a makeshift brace. "North wall's holding," he said. "Barely. We lost Torres and Ven. Juno's squad is down to 3. Wyona didn't flinch. "We reinforce with drone units. Pull back anyone who's wounded. We need every trigger finger we've got." Kess nodded, then hesitated. "They're not just attacking. They're probing, looking for weaknesses." "They'll find none," Wyona said. Outside, the enemy launched another wave. This time, they used tunneling drones, burrowing machines that erupted from the ground beneath the compound. The Marines responded with incendiary grenades and pulse mines, sealing breaches and collapsing tunnels. The fighting was relentless. Supply crews fought alongside Marines, their hands blistered, their eyes wild. One alien trader, a 4-armed mercenary named Vec, had taken up a plasma rifle and was coordinating fire teams with eerie precision. "I didn't come here to die," Vec said, "but I'll be damned if I let them take this rock." Wyona nodded. "Then you're one of us." In the quiet moments between assaults, Wyona retreated to the command tower. She stared at the tactical map, now littered with red zones and casualty markers. She tapped her comm implant. "Earth Command, this is Outpost 89. We are under siege. Requesting immediate support. Coordinates locked. Please respond." Silence. She closed her eyes. Not in despair, but in defiance. She remembered her sister's voice years ago before the First War. "Sometimes you don't fight to win. You fight to be remembered." Wyona opened her eyes. Then came the sound, distant, rising, unmistakable. Alien war drums. They were preparing for the final assault. Wyona stepped onto the balcony overlooking the compound. Her troops looked up, waiting. She raised her voice. "We've held this ground longer than anyone thought possible. We've bled for it. We've lost for it. But we are still here." She pointed to the horizon where enemy ships gathered like storm clouds. "They want this planet. Let's make them earn every inch." The Marines cheered, not loudly, not wildly, but with conviction. The siege was not over, but neither were they. Chapter 6. The Final Compound. The compound's walls groaned under the weight of the siege. Outside, the enemy gathered in silence. No more probing attacks, no more skirmishes. Just stillness, like the moment before a predator pounces. The alien fleet hovered above the horizon, their ships casting long shadows across the battlefield. The sky was bruised with smoke and nebula light, and the ground was littered with the wreckage of both sides. Inside, the last defenders prepared. Colonel Wyona Walker stood in the war room, surrounded by flickering holograms. The tactical map was a mosaic of red zones and blinking alerts. The AI systems were degrading, overloaded, damaged, and barely responsive. Ammunition was low. Medical supplies were rationed. The compound's power core was running on emergency reserves. And yet, no one spoke of surrender. Wyona turned to Lieutenant Rowe, who had taken over drone coordination after his predecessor was killed in the second wave. Status? 27 Marines still combat-ready, Rowe said. 14 wounded, but stable. Turrets are down to 40% capacity. We've got 2 orbital mines left. Wyona nodded. We use them when they breach the perimeter. Not before. Rowe hesitated. Ma'am, if they breach the perimeter, it's already too late. Wyona looked at him, her gaze steady. Then we make it count. She left the war room and descended into the lower levels of the compound. The corridors were dim, lit by emergency strips and the occasional flicker of a damaged panel. She passed wounded soldiers, some sleeping, some staring into the dark. She paused at a small alcove where a young Marine, Private Leon, was writing something on the wall with a piece of metal. "What are you doing?" Wyona asked. Leon looked up, startled. "Names, ma'am. Everyone we lost. I didn't want them to disappear." Wyona stepped closer. The wall was covered in etched names: Torres, Ven, Juno, and dozens more. She reached out and traced one with her gloved hand. "Keep going," she said softly. She moved on. In her quarters, she sat for the first time in days. The silence was heavy. She opened the small case on her desk and pulled out the photo again. Her sister, smiling in the sunlight of Earth, a lifetime ago. She remembered the last time they spoke. Her sister had been assigned to a diplomatic mission on a contested moon. She'd believed in peace, in dialogue, in the power of words. She died in an ambush. Wyona had never stopped believing in her. Even now, surrounded by war, she held on to that belief like a blade. A knock at the door. Sergeant Kess entered, limping but upright. "They're moving," he said. "Final assault. It's going to be everything they've got." Wyona stood. "Then we give them everything we are?" They returned to the command tower. The Marines assembled in the courtyard, weapons ready, armor patched with tape and grit. Vec, the alien mercenary, stood among them, his forearms holding 2 rifles and a grenade launcher. Wyona stepped forward. "This is our last stand," she said. "Not because we're weak, not because we're outnumbered, but because we chose to make it here, because this ground matters, because we matter." She looked at each of them, her voice steady. "They will come, and we will meet them, and if we fall remembered." The compound's alarms blared. The enemy was advancing. Wyona raised her rifle. "Positions!" The final battle was about to begin. Chapter 7. The Last Stand. The first explosion shook the compound like a thunderclap. Alien artillery slammed into the northern wall, sending shards of alloy and flame into the air. The Marines responded instantly, returning fire with plasma bursts and railgun rounds. The courtyard lit up with muzzle flashes and energy arcs, painting the dusk in violent color. Colonel Wyona Walker stood at the front, her rifle braced against her shoulder, her visor cracked but functional. She fired in controlled bursts, each shot dropping an enemy soldier as they surged toward the compound's gates. The aliens came in waves, armored infantry, aerial drones, and towering war beasts that moved like living siege engines. Their weapons tore through barricades, their tactics evolved with each assault. But the Marines held. Sergeant Kess manned a turret on the eastern wall, his wounded leg strapped to a brace, his face streaked with ash. "Keep the line," he shouted. "Don't let them breach." Private Leon, barely 18, fought beside him, her hands trembling but her aim true. She had etched names into the wall. Now she fought to keep those names from being the last. Vec, the alien mercenary, launched grenades into enemy formations, his voice a guttural roar of defiance. He had no stake in Earth's war, but he had found something worth protecting. Inside the compound, Lieutenant Rowe coordinated drone strikes, his fingers flying across the interface as he rerouted power and patched failing systems. "They're breaching Sector 4, he called out. Wyona responded instantly. "Redirect turrets, send Kess reinforcements." The battle raged for hours. The compound's walls buckled. The courtyard was littered with bodies, human and alien. Smoke choked the air. The AI systems flickered and died. Communications went dark. Wyona fought through it all. She moved from position to position, rallying her troops, dragging the wounded to cover, firing until her rifle overheated. Her armor was scorched, her arms bruised, her voice hoarse. But she never stopped. Then, just as the enemy prepared their final push, something changed. The sky lit up. Alien ships exploded mid-air, torn apart by precision strikes from above. The enemy forces faltered, turning their weapons skyward. Wyona looked up. Earth fleet. Sleek silver ships descended through the smoke, their cannons blazing, their drop pods releasing fresh Marines in gleaming armor. The tide turned in seconds. The enemy broke. Some fought to the end. Others fled, scrambling for extraction ships, abandoning the battlefield in chaos. Wyona stood in the courtyard, surrounded by fire and ruin, her rifle lowered. She had held the line. She had made the last stand. And she had lived to see the sky change. Chapter 8. Victory and Aftermath. The battlefield was silent. Smoke drifted across the compound, curling around shattered walls and scorched earth. The alien fleet had fled, their ships vanishing into the nebula like ghosts retreating into the dark. The last of their ground forces had either been destroyed or captured. Taurus 9, the farthest outpost in human space, still stood. Colonel Wyona Walker sat on a crate in the courtyard, her armor stripped down to its core plating, her hands wrapped in bandages. Around her, the survivors moved slowly, gathering the wounded, salvaging gear, marking the fallen. The compound was broken, but it was theirs. Earth Marines moved among the defenders, offering supplies, medical aid, and quiet words of respect. They had arrived in time, but only just. The cost of delay was written in blood across the outpost's walls. Admiral Rains, commander of the Earth Fleet, stepped down from his transport and approached Wyona. He was tall, clean-cut, and carried the weight of command with practiced ease. But when he saw her, he saluted first. "You held the line," he said. Wyona stood, returning the salute. "We did what we had to." Rains nodded. "You bought us time. You gave us a chance to regroup, to strike back. Without you, we'd be fighting this war on Earth's doorstep." Wyona looked around at her surviving Marines, Kess, limping but alive, Leon, her hands still shaking, Rowe, coordinating repairs with quiet efficiency, Vec, standing among humans like he'd always belonged. "They were the line," she said. "I just stood with them." Rains gestured toward his ship. "We'll take you home. All of you." Wyona hesitated. She looked up at the sky where the nebula still shimmered with ancient light. Taurus 9 had been a place of exile, boredom, and silence. But now it was something else, a memory, a monument. She turned to Leon, who was still etching names into the compound wall. "Make sure they're remembered," Wyona said. Leon nodded. "Always." As the Earth fleet prepared to depart, Wyona took one last walk through the compound. She passed the war room, the barracks, the courtyard. She touched the wall where the names were carved. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The last stand had been made, and it had been enough. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also hit the bell icon for notifications.